the swastika in Christian and Jewish sacred traditions. While today, the swastika is largely associated with hatred and extremism, historically, it held a very different, even sacred, role within both early Christian and Jewish traditions. In these contexts, the swastika symbolized cosmic order, divine victory, and eternal life, drawing on deep mystical associations inherited from the ancient world. Early Christian use concealed crosses and symbols of resurrection. Among early Christians, the swastika often appeared as a hidden cross, a cipher through which believers could express their faith while avoiding persecution under Roman rule. It symbolized the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ, victory over death, and the hope of eternal salvation. The hooked arms of the swastika, suggesting rotation and dynamism, evoked the triumph of life over the static decay of death. Churches from the Romanesque and Gothic periods incorporated swastika patterns in mosaics, frescoes, and architectural details. The Church of St. Lawrence in England, for instance, features carved swastika motifs dating back to the 11th century. Roman churches like San Clemente reserve swastika-like designs from early Christian mosaics. The Teutonic Knights, a German medieval Catholic order, prominently displayed cross forms, which some later interpreted as stylized swastikas. Some esoteric writers, like Guido von List, suggested that medieval Christian orders, such as the Knights Templar, encoded secret knowledge within their symbols, proposing that their Maltese cross was a fusion of clockwise and counterclockwise swastikas, merging cosmic opposites and embodying ancient mystical truths preserved through Christian guise. In Romanesque Christian art, swastikas often appeared alongside vines, crosses, and fish motifs, each a symbol of Christ's role as the bringer of life and divine nourishment. In Gothic cathedral designs, particularly in floors and stained glass, swastika-like patterns echoed ancient solar symbols, representing Christ as the Son of Righteousness prophesied in Malachi 4:2. Jewish use, the swastika in synagogues and mystical symbolism. Similarly, within Jewish tradition, the swastika was deeply woven into artistic and spiritual life, particularly from the Second Temple period into late antiquity. Synagogue mosaics from the Greco-Roman and Byzantine eras frequently employed the swastika as part of geometric designs, symbolizing eternal movement, divine order, and the cycle of creation. The En Gedi Synagogue, 3rd century CE, and the site at 𝗖𝗆𝗱𝗏 both feature prominent swastika patterns among their intricate mosaics, appearing alongside menorahs, lions of Judah, and palm motifs. At Capernaum's ancient synagogue, 4th to 5th century CE, on the Sea of Galilee, archaeologists discovered elaborate stone carvings that included both swastikas and hexagrams, 6-pointed stars, suggesting a harmonious blending of sacred cosmic symbols, a far cry from the later militarized connotations of these forms. In the Byzantine period, 4th to 7th centuries CE, swastikas were often used as part of complex mosaic floors in synagogues across the Holy Land and the broader Mediterranean. Scholars interpret these patterns as stylized flowers, wheels, or dynamic spirals symbolizing life, motion, and the perpetual unfolding of divine creation, all central to Jewish cosmology and the Kabbalistic tree of life. One remarkable example of Jewish swastika usage comes from Parashat Eliezer, an 18th century Kabbalistic text, which presents a swastika formed out of Hebrew letters, a mystical sign pointing to hidden divine realities. Here, the swastika acted as a representation of the unfolding of the Sephirot, emanations of divine energy, in the act of continuous creation. Scholar Erwin Goodenow, in his seminal Jewish Symbols in the Greco-Roman period, documented numerous cases of Jewish swastika usage, noting that ancient Jewish communities, far from shunning Greco-Roman symbols, often adapted and reinterpreted them through the lens of monotheism and sacred history. Intriguingly, even into the 20th century, Echoes of this symbolic past persisted. A 1927 synagogue in Hartford, Connecticut, featured a floor mosaic patterned after classical designs, including swastikas, as part of its aesthetic and historical continuity with ancient Jewish traditions, an architectural choice made before the Nazis permanently tainted the symbol in the Western mind. Common threads: cosmic order and divine triumph. In both Christian and Jewish usage, the swastika was fundamentally tied to the same archetypal ideas: the cyclical nature of creation, the victory of divine life over death, and the hidden workings of cosmic order. The dynamic motion suggested by the rotating arms, whether clockwise, solar, or counterclockwise, lunar, chthonic, aligned with the religious worldview that saw history not as a straight line, but as a sacred cycle under divine providence. Far from being a symbol of hate, the swastika within these sacred traditions was a sign of hope, mystery, and hidden truth. A reminder that even in times of persecution or exile, the divine order continued to unfold, and the victory of life and righteousness was assured. The swastika, Baal worship, and the fire of the sun priestesses. Throughout the ancient Near East, symbols connected to solar worship played a central role in religious life. Among them, the swastika emerged as a potent emblem of fire, fertility, and the cyclical power of the sun. Nowhere was this more deeply woven into ritual than in the cultic worship of Baal, the storm and fertility god, whose influence dominated the Canaanite and Phoenician religious imagination. Central to these rites were the sun priestesses, the bearers of the sacred fire, women who carried the torch of divine vitality, both in fertility rituals and, darkly, in rites of sacrifice. The swastika as a solar and fertility symbol. The swastika, with its arms evoking spinning motion, was widely regarded as a solar symbol across Indo-European and Near Eastern cultures. Its rotation mirrored the churning heavens, the movement of the sun across the sky, and the eternal cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In Canaanite tradition, where Baal was venerated as a god of storms, rain, and fertility, the swastika's association with cosmic motion aligned naturally with Baal's role as the lord of life-giving forces. The sun, the rain, the thunder, all were seen as Baal's gifts to a world in constant need of renewal. Archaeological discoveries in the Levant and Eastern Mediterranean revealed the swastika carved on ritual objects, temple architecture, and textiles associated with sun-worshipping cults. These findings suggest that the swastika acted as a visual shorthand for the vital energies Baal governed, the sun priestesses and the sacred fire. Among the Canaanites and Phoenicians, women played crucial roles as priestesses of the sun, bearing the sacred fire that symbolized divine vitality. These priestesses were the living vessels through which the fire of heaven touched earth, sustaining cosmic order and ensuring fertility. The sacred fires, often maintained at temples dedicated to Baal, and Asherah, his consort, were never allowed to die. The sun priestesses, sometimes called torch-bearers, guarded and carried the flame in ritual processions. Their dresses often bore embroidered or woven swastika patterns, signifying the solar current they embodied and channeled. These priestesses participated in complex rites intended to reinvigorate the land's fertility, sometimes involving symbolic marriages, hierosgamos, between priestesses and priests representing the union of Baal and the earth. In the darker shadow of these rites, there were also child sacrifice rituals, where the sacred fire consumed the offerings, sacrifices understood as a terrible but powerful means of renewing divine favor. The connection to Baal and the swastika's hidden power. The swastika's presence in Baal worship circles symbolized more than just solar energy. It expressed the spiraling forces of creation and destruction governed by Baal. As the god of fertility, Baal brought life through rain and sun. As the god of storms, he could also bring devastation. The swastika's dynamic turning thus mirrored Baal's dual power, blessing and curse, creation and annihilation. In some interpretations, each arm of the swastika symbolized one of the elements Baal ruled, sun, storm, rain, and wind, eternally cycling and regenerating the world. Later mystical traditions, especially in theosophical and esoteric circles, suggested that the Phoenicians, Baal's worshippers and great seafarers, carried this sacred symbol across the Mediterranean, blending it into the mythologies of Greece, Rome, and beyond. Some occult theories propose that the Phoenicians themselves were heirs to a lost Aryan homeland, where the swastika already held cosmic significance, further deepening the symbol's mysterious resonance. Echoes of fire and sky. The memory of the sun priestesses, carrying sacred fire, endures faintly in later traditions. The eternal flames kept burning at temples, the torch relays of ancient games, and even the perpetual candles of Christian churches. Yet behind these echoes lies a much older world, one where women clothed in swastika symbols bore fire across sacred spaces, invoking Baal's raw, regenerative power upon a waiting earth. Thus, the swastika in Baal worship was not merely an ornament. It was a living sign, a rotating, burning emblem of cosmic forces, the fire of heaven made manifest, the unbroken cycle of life and death, the heartbeat of an ancient and untamed world. From Baal to Yahweh, hidden currents of the swastika, fire, and sacrifice in Israelite and Christian traditions. The spiritual and cultural world from which Israelite religion emerged was not a vacuum. Rather, it was the living soil of Canaanite civilization, a world rich with gods, goddesses, sacred fires, and cosmic symbols like the swastika. The Hebrews, who would later form the Israelite nation, were themselves Canaanites by language, geography, and culture. The early Israelites and their neighbors shared many religious ideas, and at times even deities. The lines between Baal worship and Yahweh worship were not always clear. In fact, archaeological and textual evidence shows that Yahweh was at times identified with Baal, or seen as one god among many in a larger divine family. Understanding this shared world, and how its exoteric teachings for the masses and esoteric teachings for the initiated coexisted, is key to unlocking the deeper layers of later Christian symbology, including the mysterious survival of sacred symbols like the swastika. Canaanite roots, Hebrews, Israelites, and their common heritage. By the Late Bronze Age, circa 1500 to 1200 BCE, Canaan was a patchwork of city-states and tribal territories. The people we call Hebrews, Ibram, literally, those from beyond, meaning nomads or migrants, spoke the same Semitic dialects as the Canaanites, worshipped in similar ways, and shared many customs. Over time, these Hebrews organized into the tribes of Israel, but they remained culturally and religiously tied to their Canaanite kin. The Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, itself preserves traces of this early kinship. Names of Israelite patriarchs, kings, and places often incorporate the names of Canaanite deities like El, the high god of the Canaanite pantheon, and Baal, lord or master. Christians, in turn, inherited the Hebrew Bibles as their sacred text, but often without understanding the older, complex, sometimes controversial religious currents hidden within it. This gap created a division: exoteric teachings, the outer public face of the Bible, versus esoteric teachings, hidden knowledge known to the few. Yahweh, from the pantheon to supreme God, Yahweh, the national God of Israel, did not initially emerge as a monotheistic figure. Early inscriptions, such as those found at Kuntilitej-Rud, circa 800 BCE, speak of Yahweh and his Asherah, suggesting Yahweh had a consort, like other gods of the time. In these early layers, Yahweh was one among many gods, much like Baal, El, and Asherah in the wider Canaanite pantheon. In fact, some biblical texts themselves hint at Yahweh being the storm god, a role traditionally associated with Baal. In Psalm 29, Yahweh rides upon the storm clouds and thunders over the waters, using language identical to earlier Baal hymns from 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏. Thus, for many early Israelites, Baal and Yahweh were conceptually similar, and sometimes even merged, worshippers would sometimes venerate Yahweh with the rituals and expectations previously used for Baal, including fertility rites, sacred fires, and, tragically, child sacrifice. Child sacrifice and the sacred fire. Biblical prophets, like Jeremiah and Ezekiel, fiercely denounce Israelite practices of child sacrifice, especially passing children through the fire to Molech, a deity often linked with Baal, or with Yahweh under certain syncretistic forms. Jeremiah 7:31 King James Version states, "And they have built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not." The high places, Bamit, were altars often atop hills, precisely the kind used in Canaanite worship for Baal. It was here that children were sometimes offered up, not in rejection of Yahweh, but often as part of misguided Yahweh worship, reflecting the old blend of Canaanite and Israelite practice, the sacred fire. That same fire once carried by the sun priestesses in Baal worship, thus continued to burn in Israelite rites, now reinterpreted, but still carrying the ancient energy of sacrifice, fertility, and cosmic renewal. Swastikas, sacred fire, and hidden Christian continuities. The sacred solar fire symbolism, embodied by the swastika, never truly vanished. Instead, it traveled underground into early mystery traditions, Jewish esoteric sects, such as the Merkaba mystics, and eventually Christian Gnosticism. Early Christians, especially before official orthodoxy crystallized, operated in secret societies, where symbols like the swastika, disguised as hooked crosses, continued to express the victory of divine light over death, as previously discussed. Early Christian art often used the swastika as a symbol of Christ's triumph, echoing the ancient fire of life that conquered darkness. Even the concept of the cross itself, once a symbol of shame, came to embody the cosmic axis, axis mundi, a role previously held by the rotating solar swastika. In mystical Christianity, the cross became the center of the spiritual world, just as the spinning solar fire of Baal and the sacred priestesses once marked the center of life itself. The exoteric Christianity preached publicly emphasized Christ's literal death and resurrection. But the esoteric Christianity quietly preserved deeper teachings about cosmic renewal, divine fire, and the hidden workings of God through light and sacrifice. Concepts that can be traced back to the ancient worship of Baal, the swirling fires of the sun priestesses, and the ever-turning swastika of life. Templars, Kabbalists, and the hidden fires, the secret transmission of ancient knowledge. The visible flow of history shows Christianity becoming a dominant religion, but beneath the surface, ancient knowledge never truly died. Instead, it was hidden, encrypted, and passed along through groups that understood the difference between exoteric belief for the masses and esoteric wisdom for the initiated. Among the chief guardians of this hidden knowledge were the Knights Templar, the Jewish Kabbalists, and the Christian mystics of the Middle Ages. Together, and sometimes separately, they preserved fragments of the ancient cosmic religion, the religion of sacred fire, solar symbols, and the understanding of God, not just as creator, but as the living flame at the center of the universe. The Templars, guardians of the old mysteries. Founded around 1119 CE, the Knights Templar were officially a Catholic military order sworn to protect Christian pilgrims. But the Templars quickly became much more: bankers, builders, and seekers of arcane knowledge. Their headquarters on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the former site of Solomon's Temple, placed them directly atop the spiritual epicenter of ancient Hebrew, Israelite, and even Canaanite religious practices. Through exposure to Eastern Christian, Jewish, and Islamic mystical traditions, the Templars are believed to have encountered Kabbalistic teachings, ancient rites, and possibly secret writings concerning the divine fire, the rotating heavenly spheres, and the true spiritual meaning of sacrifice, all concepts echoing the earlier 𝗧𝗏𝗶𝗁𝗏 continuum. Some scholars argue that certain Templar symbols, like the equal armed cross, and the eight-pointed star, subtly encode ancient solar and fire symbolism, drawing from both Christian and pre-Christian traditions. It's possible that among their hidden doctrines, the Templars preserved a memory of the sacred fire priestesses, the cosmic swastika, and the hidden pantheon that lay behind biblical monotheism. Their eventual persecution and mass execution by the French crown and the Church in the early 1300s suggests that they held secrets deemed dangerous, secrets about the true history of religion. Kabbalists, keepers of the inner fire, parallel to the Templars. Within the Jewish world, Kabbalah, the mystical tradition, blossomed. Medieval Kabbalists in Spain, France, and later Safed, Galilee, developed profound teachings about the nature of God as infinite, unknowable light, Ein Sof, and the creation of the world through a shattering of vessels, 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗶𝗁𝗱𝗆, echoing ancient concepts of cosmic fire, explosion, and divine energy. In Kabbalah, symbols resembling rotating wheels, spirals, and radiating lights appear, much like the ancient swastika symbolism. Ezekiel's vision of the wheel within a wheel, Ezekiel 1, often used by Kabbalists, can be interpreted as a mystical remnant of sun-wheel worship, repurposed through a Jewish theological lens. Moreover, Kabbalistic meditations involved visualizations of ascending and descending fiery lights, bearing strong resemblance to the sacred fires once tended by the Canaanite and Israelite priestesses. Christian mystics, reclaiming the cosmic Christ. In the Christian world, mystics like Meister Eckhart, Hildegard of Bingen, and later Jacob Boehme also carried threads of the ancient fire tradition. Hildegard saw visions of a living light, and spoke of God as a cosmic fire burning at the center of existence. Eckhart taught that the soul could become one with God through an inner ignition of divine light. Boehme wrote of the inner fire of God and saw all of creation as unfolding from a fiery center. These Christian mystics, though working under the framework of Orthodox theology, were in truth tapping into the same ancient currents that had animated the sun priestesses of Baal, the fire altars of Canaan, and the secret symbology of the Hebrews and early Christians. In them, we see the survival of the ancient idea, God as not just a distant creator, but the living flame at the heart of all being, ever spinning, ever creating, ever consuming and renewing, the esoteric legacy. Hiding in plain sight, through the Templars, Kabbalists, and Christian mystics, the hidden teachings of sacred fire, cosmic rotation, sacrifice, and divine light were preserved, masked behind acceptable exoteric forms, but recognizable to those with eyes to see. This hidden lineage continued to influence alchemy, the transmutation of the inner fire, Rosicrucianism, symbolized by the Rosy Cross, a fusion of death and solar rebirth, Freemasonry, which kept many solar and sacred geometry symbols alive, occult Christianity, especially Gnostic and esoteric Christian movements. The swastika, reduced publicly to a simple ornament or misunderstood symbol, remained secretly a sign of divine motion, cosmic balance, and the ever-turning wheel of life and fire that ties the universe to its hidden creator. Solar secrets and hidden fires, the ancient legacy in modern secret societies. When the Templars fell and open mystical teaching became dangerous, the torch of ancient knowledge, the traditions of the sacred fire, the spinning heavens, the hidden nature of God, passed underground. It survived through new vessels, secret societies, esoteric brotherhoods, and mystery schools, many of which drew directly from Canaanite, Israelite, Kabbalistic, and Christian mystical roots. Freemasonry, builders of the inner temple. Among the most visible heirs to the ancient tradition are the Freemasons. Though outwardly a fraternity devoted to moral improvement and charity, Freemasonry, especially its higher degrees, encodes deep solar symbolism, sacred geometry, and fire ritual into its structure. The great architect of the universe, the Masonic term for God, echoes the ancient image of the divine fire spinning out creation, a cosmic craftsman. The letter G, prominent in Masonic temples, ties back not only to geometry and God, but in deeper readings to the gamma-shaped swastika, the whirling force of creation. The blazing star, five-pointed star, often depicted inside Masonic lodges, symbolizes divine light, the sacred fire, and was historically associated with Venus, the morning star, another ancient solar deity connection. Masonic rituals centered around death and rebirth of the initiate mirror the ancient fire priestess rituals of symbolic death and cosmic rebirth under the stars. In this way, Masonry can be seen as a continuation, not simply of medieval guild traditions, but of an ancient spiritual project, preserving the inner meaning of sacrifice, sacred fire, and cosmic unity. Rosicrucians, the hidden wisdom of the cross. The Rosicrucian movement, emerging publicly in Europe in the 17th century, also claimed access to a secret tradition of spiritual alchemy and hidden fire. The Rosy Cross, the symbol of the order, represents the flowering of life from the crucified, sacrificed, center, a direct echo of solar death and rebirth cycles. Rosicrucian manifestos spoke of a reformation of the whole world, not merely in science or religion, but in the awakening of a hidden spiritual fire within humanity. Rosicrucian philosophy blended Kabbalah, Hermeticism, Christian mysticism, and alchemical symbolism, all heirs of the ancient Canaanite-Israelite continuum, repackaged for a Christian European world that had forgotten its true origins. The Black Sun and modern esoteric fascination. The Black Sun symbol, used and distorted by later movements, including certain Nazi occultists, has older roots in the concept of the hidden sun, the dark source of power behind visible light. The idea of a hidden, inner sun comes from ancient mystery teachings, where the true divine fire burns unseen behind the visible world. It connects to the esoteric belief that there is an invisible order, a secret engine of creation, known only to initiates. Groups such as the 𝗧𝗍𝗱𝗁𝗍𝗔 Society, Vril Society, and certain branches of the ONENOB sought to rediscover this lost solar technology, unaware or perhaps uncaring that they were dabbling with ideas far older and far more dangerous than they realized. Echoes of Baal and Yahweh in modern mysticism. Even today, echoes of the ancient Baal-Yahweh continuum survive. Dual worship of visible light, Baal, Lord of the skies, and the hidden, invisible source, Yahweh's unknowable fire. The concept of sacrifice, death, and rebirth as pathways to power and enlightenment. The rotation of symbols, wheels, and crosses as metaphors for the living movement of the universe. The use of the swastika, hexagram, and pentagram not as racial or political signs, but as ancient mystical diagrams of creation. Thus, the secret societies of the modern world, whether Masonic, Rosicrucian, Theosophical, or occultist, carry fragments of a much older priesthood. A priesthood that once tended sacred fires atop Canaanite mountains, that whispered hidden names of God beneath desert stars, and that understood that to worship the Creator was to ignite the inner fire, the true divine revolution within the human soul. Sons of light, the elect and the secret keepers of the fire. As the ancient traditions of Baal, Yahweh, and the sacred fire rituals flowed underground, they did not simply disappear, they transformed, hidden within the evolving mythology of the elect, the chosen, and the sons of light. Throughout the secret societies, religious mysticism, and occult movements that followed, the idea remained the same. There exists a spiritual elite who alone possess the hidden knowledge of the divine fire. The sons of light, echoes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. The idea of a special, spiritually superior group can be seen as early as the Dead Sea Scrolls, attributed to the Essenes, a Jewish sect active during the Second Temple period. In the scrolls, the sons of light are depicted as warriors of righteousness, battling the sons of darkness in a cosmic war. This dualism, light versus dark, is a spiritualization of the ancient Canaanite-Israelite tension. Yahweh's hidden fire against the chaotic forces of the outer world. The Sons of Light were not simply pious individuals. They were initiated, ritually purified, and trained in the mysteries of the cosmos, law, and divine order, a model that would influence Christian monasticism, Templar orders, and esoteric brotherhoods. The Templars and the return of the priesthood. The Knights Templar, 1119 to 1312 CE, became, in many ways, the physical embodiment of the ancient elect. Originally established to protect Christian pilgrims, the Templars rapidly evolved into a powerful secret society with vast wealth, hidden rituals, and rumors of forbidden knowledge. Accusations at their trial included worshipping a mysterious head, Baphomet, secret initiation ceremonies, and rituals involving the sacred fire and solar symbols. Some scholars believe that the Templars rediscovered hidden knowledge during their time in the Holy Land, perhaps ancient Canaanite Israelite teachings tied to Baal and Yahweh worship, the sacred geometry of Solomon's temple, and solar mysteries. The Templar symbol, the red cross, can also be seen as an evolution of earlier solar and fire symbology, with crossroads, rotation, and crucifixion, resurrection motifs echoing ancient beliefs, Kabbalah, hidden fire in Jewish mysticism. At the same time, within Judaism, the tradition of Kabbalah preserved the hidden knowledge of divine fire. The separate tree in Kabbalistic diagrams represents emanations of divine light and fire, linking heaven and earth. The concept of Ein Sof, the infinite, unknowable God, matches the earlier hidden aspect of Yahweh, worshipped in secret by Israelite elites. Merkaba mysticism, chariot visions, involved ascension through fiery heavens, recalling the ancient priestesses who tended the sacred spinning fires on mountain altars. Kabbalistic teachings maintained a strict distinction, exoteric teachings for the common people, and esoteric mysteries only for the initiated. Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, and modern secret societies. Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and later occult societies saw themselves as the spiritual heirs of these ancient mysteries. Initiates underwent symbolic death and rebirth, dying to the world of ignorance and being reborn in the hidden light of the true fire. Solar and stellar symbols permeated Masonic temples, suns, stars, wheels, hexagrams, and yes, occasionally the swastika as a spinning fire wheel of creation. Knowledge of sacred geometry, sacred fire, and cosmic cycles was seen as a pathway to reconnect with the original source, the same quest pursued by ancient Hebrew prophets and Canaanite high priests. Even in Christian mystical orders, like certain knighthood orders and theosophical societies, the division remained. Mass religion taught morality and obedience. Inner circles pursued hidden enlightenment and divine empowerment, the ongoing secret war. Sons of light versus sons of darkness. Today, this ancient war, light against dark, knowledge against ignorance, fire against chaos, continues. Those few who hold the true secret of the fire are the heirs of Canaanite priestesses, Israelite prophets, early Christian mystics, Jewish Kabbalists, and medieval Templars. Powerful elite networks around the world, knowingly or unknowingly, carry fragments of these teachings. Meanwhile, the masses are fed simplified exoteric teachings, morality tales, empty ritual, while the deeper truths remain hidden. The lesson is clear: the ancient fire never died. It was hidden, tended by secret guardians. Those who seek to truly know must pass through fire themselves, and emerge reborn as sons of light. The sacrificial lamb, from Baal to Christ and the esoteric altar, the origins of sacrifice, Baal and infant offerings. At the heart of ancient Baal worship was sacrifice, not just any sacrifice, but the ritualistic offering of the most precious, the innocent, and the helpless. Infants, in Canaanite traditions, it was believed that Baal, as a solar deity, could only be appeased through blood sacrifice, often carried out in the form of child offerings, to ensure the fertility of the earth, the bounty of the crops, and the stability of the cosmic order. Fire was central to this ritual, symbolizing the transformative and destructive power of the divine, as well as the purifying nature of Baal's blessings. Infants, wrapped in blankets, were placed on the altar of flame, becoming both offerings and a form of divine transmutation. Though Baal worship became officially banned and suppressed over time by the emerging monotheistic beliefs of the Israelites, traces of infant sacrifice were reimagined, transformed, and subtly woven into religious and esoteric teachings. From Judaism to Christianity, and even into the mystical traditions that would follow. The transformation in Israelite worship, Yahweh and the sacrifice of the firstborn. While Yahweh, the God of Israel, came to be understood as a deity distinct from Baal, the tradition of sacrifice continued, albeit in modified forms. The sacrifice of the firstborn was one of the most significant rituals in ancient Israelite society. It was practiced not only as a means of consecration to Yahweh, but as a ritual act symbolizing obedience and the recognition of divine sovereignty. Passover, the pivotal Jewish festival, commemorated the time when Yahweh ordered the sacrifice of the firstborn to protect the Israelites from the angel of death. The lamb, whose blood was smeared on doorposts to shield the Hebrews, became a symbol of divine protection, and the sacrifice of the lamb mirrored ancient ritual practices of substitutionary sacrifice. However, it was infant sacrifice that remained in the background as an unspoken part of the cultural subconscious, as Israelites frequently fell prey to the lure of Canaanite religious practices, including the offering of children to Baal and the fire rituals. Though official Israelite worship rejected such practices, the lingering influence of sacred fire and child sacrifice was never entirely erased. Christian reinterpretation, the sacrificial Lamb of Christ. The transition of sacrifice into Christianity introduced one of the most profound reinterpretations of the concept, that of the sacrificial Lamb. In the New Testament, Christ is often referred to as the Lamb of God, representing the ultimate sacrificial offering that would save humanity from sin. The crucifixion of Jesus takes on the symbolism of the sacrificial lamb, an innocent, sinless being offered as a sacrifice for the atonement of human sin. Just as Passover lambs were sacrificed, so too would Jesus be sacrificed as the final atonement for all of humanity. In Christian theology, this sacrificial act is viewed not just as a ritual killing, but as the ultimate act of divine love, a self-sacrifice meant to cleanse the soul and restore the balance of cosmic order, an offering that mirrors the ancient belief that only through the shedding of innocent blood could the world be set right. However, there are layers of deeper mystical and esoteric meanings embedded within the Christian sacrificial lamb symbolism. Much like the solar fire worship of Baal, the sacrifice of Jesus is a ritual of transformation, purification, and ascension. Alchemical death and the rebirth, esoteric interpretations of sacrifice. Esoteric Christianity, along with other occult and mystical traditions, sees the sacrificial act as symbolic of the soul's journey through death and rebirth. In alchemy, the death of the ego is central to the transmutation of the self. The alchemist dies to their old self, just as Christ dies on the cross, in order to undergo a spiritual purification and emerge in a transformed state of higher consciousness. This inner death and resurrection mirrors the ancient practice of child sacrifice, where the fire consumes the old, unworthy self, and in doing so, purifies the soul, making it fit for the divine. The idea of sacrifice, both personal and collective, permeates many mystical traditions. The ritual of the sacrifice of the lamb is symbolic of the destruction of the lower nature, the death of the self, and the rebirth of the individual into a higher state of being. Initiates in secret societies, from Freemasonry to Rosicrucianism, partake in symbolic sacrificial rites that reflect these themes of personal transformation. The fire here is not necessarily a literal flame, but represents the burning away of ignorance, ego, and earthly attachments to achieve enlightenment and divine union. Child sacrifice and the occult, the hidden fire of initiation. The hidden legacy of child sacrifice. once practiced in ancient Baal rituals, reappears in occult and esoteric traditions that seek to access divine wisdom through the rite of passage. Within these secret teachings, it is not the child who is the victim, but the initiate themselves. The process of spiritual death and rebirth that is seen as essential to gaining true knowledge of the divine. Through rituals of initiation, the candidate's inner child is symbolically sacrificed, and in its place, the initiate is reborn as a vessel for higher wisdom and divine power. In the esoteric traditions, the fire that was once used in child sacrifices is reimagined as the spiritual flame that burns away the old self, a purified fire that facilitates ascension to higher states of consciousness and understanding. The continuing legacy of the fire, the return of the hidden knowledge, the ancient rituals of fire, sacrifice, and spiritual transformation live on in the mystical teachings that form the backbone of many secret societies, religions, and occult movements. The sacrificial lamb, from its roots in Baal worship and Yahweh's demands to Christ's crucifixion and mystical alchemical death, remains one of the most powerful symbols of sacrifice, purification, and transformation in the human quest for spiritual ascension. In these rituals and symbols, death and rebirth are not the ends, but the beginnings of divine enlightenment, offering an opportunity for the transformation of the soul and the reconnection with the sacred fire that was once hidden away in the hearts of ancient civilizations.